Okay, regulation of stress response. Adrenal glands, 13.3. The adrenals, as we know, are located above the kidneys, and they're composed of an outer cortex and an inner medulla. And there they are sitting on top of the kidneys. Okay, well, the adrenal medulla, we're going to look at the adrenal medulla first. It produces epinephrine, norepinephrine, commonly referred to as adrenaline and noradrenaline. And it's under nervous control. Remember the sympathetic nervous system. And it's involved in short-term stress, fight or flight. So it increases metabolism, breathing rate, bronchioles dilate, that sort of thing, heart rate, blood pressure, blood flow to the muscles. And you can go through this a little more carefully, that flow chart 13.21. It raises BGL. That's important as well. We can't forget that this raises blood glucose levels. Okay, adrenal cortex is on the outside. Okay, now this is not a short-term but a long-term stress response. And it releases a steroid hormone. Remember, those are the hormones that can penetrate easily through a cell membrane. The glucocorticoids, gluco, means that they're going to increase blood sugar. And the main one is cortisol. Mineral corticoids are also released from and they increase blood pressure. The main hormone is aldosterone. And they also secrete small amounts of gonadotropins. So women produce some small amounts of testosterone, and that's where it would come from. Vice versa for men with estrogen. Cortisol, glucocorticoid, it's a stress hormone with long-lasting effects. There's a danger. The hypothalamus detects that. Cortico-releasing hormone, okay? That releasing hormone from the hypothalamus stimulates the anterior pituitary. ACTH is then released. Remember, these are two tropic hormones. Tropic hormone 1, tropic hormone number 2. Adrenal cortex stimulates adrenal cortex. We know where that is. And that's going to release cortisol. Cortisol increases, blood glucose levels increase through breakdown of muscle protein into amino acids. And it's also a natural inflammatory, more susceptible to infection, though. So it's used in asthma meds, corticosteroids, reduces inflammation in your bronchioles. Okay, so the small airway passages. So there's a treatment of it. You can always use corticosteroids for reducing inflammation just on your skin, things like that as well. Now, the cortisol has a negative feedback on the anterior pituitary, right? Shuts down ACTH and the releasing hormone from the hypothalamus. So there's our negative feedback once the danger has abated. Now, chronic stress, impaired thinking, memory, heart damage. Now, there was a lot of discussion a few years ago about through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission about Indigenous children in schools. And one of the main effects on them was significant homesickness. Many experience chronic stress. So what was interesting about the TRC is that when people were being asked about their experiences, the testimony given was very vague, oftentimes very vague. And people that are under chronic stress, think about people growing up in a dysfunctional home, chronic stress, it actually affects their memory, impaired thinking, and it can also result in organ damage as well. So we're learning a lot about this through events like this, TRC. Okay, aldosterone, mineral corticoid, stimulates kidney tubules to increase sodium absorption. Draws water back into the blood, blood pressure increases. So aldosterone acts on the distal and collecting duct. Antidiuretic hormone acts here on the collecting tubule. Okay, aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption. Well, that's going to draw water across and your blood pressure is going to go up. So this is homeostasis for blood pressure. Okay, now if you have a damage to the adrenal cortex, adrenal glands not produce sufficient steroid hormones. Okay, that could be one thing. Addison's disease is the disease associated with this. Low blood pressure, well, we could see why, right? Because aldosterone would be affected, for instance. Okay, so that would be one of the effects linking to aldosterone, Addison's disease. Okay, antidiuretic hormone. Again, this is going to act on the collecting duct. Now, this diagram is in your book. Okay, when there is dehydration or low blood pressure and volume because of less water, that's going to stimulate osmotic receptors that in turn will um, stimulate the production of ADH in the hypothalamus. Well, if it's being produced in the hypothalamus, where does it get stored again? Posterior pituitary. What were the two hormones? Oxytocin, ADH from the posterior. And ADH is going to get released. It's going to increase vasoconstriction, high blood pressure, but it's also going to increase water reabsorption in the nephrons. So more water, your blood pressure is going to go up. Okay, so there's going to be less urine and blood pressure goes up. And if we get more water in there, the osmoreceptors then are going to be shut off through negative feedback. Okay, we're going to look at this next um, video.